So the next step is, well, actually maybe removing the SD cards, as you will do data retrieval from them if this came out of the ocean. And so you can see they just, are friction fit in here. What's important to remember is that the first SD card for recording is the one on this side here. So closest to where the battery is. This is number 1, and then number 2, number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in an 8 slot recorder. Other recorders have 2 slots. And so if you are not populating all of them, always start on this side. Always start with number 1, number 2, and however many SD cards you happen to have available. So now let's say we want to get ready for the next deployment, and you connect to USB now. And notice I have no battery in here right now. And after some time, I should see an orange LED lighting up here. And there we go. So the orange LED, whoops, now it's staying on. So the orange LED means that the recorder recognized the USB connection. If it's not coming on, check your cable, your USB port on your computer, whatever, It means, okay, I'm ready to accept commands for configuration, which goes through a utility called MicroMars Dock that you run on the PC that's been delivered with your SonarPoint recorder. So I will set this down now here and launch MicroMars Dock. All right, so once your USB is hooked up, you click on SonarPoint Dock, which should be on your desktop on the Desert Star delivered computer. And here we go. And now you have to hit Configure Communication Settings and select the COM port that you have. It's just identified as USB serial port. This is the only one I have. I have some other virtual serial ports on my machine, but select that. Here we go. That field needs to be green. You don't have to modify the baud rate. It's 9600 baud. That's correct. Now you go to Actions and hit Connect Device. You'll see a progress bar down here. Again, that will only work if you have the orange light on your recorder, meaning, it's expecting commands here. Now we have the general settings, and we have mission timing and acoustic recording. So we can fill out all these 3. General settings, there's really nothing to be modified here. Mission timing, you can define a mission start and end time, but typically SonarPoint, unlike the previous MicroMars, has its own on-off switch. So I just leave that as it is. You can hit endless mission. Doesn't really matter as long as the 2 timestamps here are the same 1970 0101, which is the beginning of the Unix epoch. You're fine, but I'll hit that here. And then acoustic recording, typically recorder mode on. There's also duty cycle and acoustic event, but we won't go into that here. You select the sample frequency. Here I have 312,500 hertz selected, and that will work fine for what we want to do here right now. Segment size, you set what you want here. I'm just going to go, normally you would have 15 minutes or 1 hour, because you cannot store more than 1,000 files on each SD card. It's a limit right now in the reader. I'm going to go for 1 minute here, which is just for test recordings. And once you are happy with everything, you can hit Actions, Write Settings, and you see the progress bar verifying, and that's completed now. Now I show you another trick. View raw comms. Now you see the raw communication between going from the PC to the recorder in the yellow and from the recorder back to the PC in blue. And I'm going to do the write settings here. All right. Next thing you want to do is you want to format the SD cards for a new deployment. It says this recorder has 4 memory modules, which means 8 SD cards. And let's see what happens as we do that. Format device, yes. Notice now in the blue screen, formatting SD card number 1, okay. 2, there's 2 per module, so that should go all the way up to 8. And now we're at number 8, and it says format success. Now, if it says format failed, maybe because there's a missing SD card or something like that, this blue window would show you what is going on here. All right. At that point, we're really ready. You could now simply disconnect the USB cable from the computer. The recorder would switch off, and you just plug it back together, and you're ready to go. But I want to show you a couple more tricks that are quite useful. First one is the use of the EDR command, or exit doc request. And I'm going to do that not from Micromars doc, but rather I'm going to go into TerraTerm, and that will be installed on your computer as well. Setup, serial port, it was COM3, 9600 baud. All right. And now the recorder serial number was 1013. So the format of the commands is always starts on the dollar 1013. So that's the address that this command is directed to. Comma 0. That's my computer ID number. You can always use 0. It doesn't really matter what it is. Comma EDR. Exit doc request. And let's see what happens. Okay, it now says the recorder is in sleep mode, actually. It says sleep again. That will happen once every 16 seconds. Here, let me just maximize my TerraTerm screen so you can see that nicely now. And now I will switch on the recorder here. All right, so I'm activating the recorder now. All right, and now you will get a number of printouts here. It is quite verbose. So it says, all right, I'm going to start recording here in 60 seconds. Oh, in 5 seconds it said. Let's see. And here we go. Initialization, okay. There are 0 files currently on this SD card, and it started to record 114 loops at 312.5 kilohertz sample rate. 114 loops. Each loop is, I believe, a million samples, and this is going to now last about 60 seconds, or our segment length. So we'll just see what happens. After somewhat less than a minute, it should announce that the recording is completed and it's about to start another recording. Remember, we got here we go. It's now saying I'm done with this one. It's getting ready. 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, and now we're in the next 1 minute recording segment and so on. And so this, as you can see, is quite useful to see what's going on with your recorder. Is it doing what you want it to do? And so that is, good for various diagnostic purposes. And once you might use this as your procedure. So just use the EDR once you're done with configuration. Take a look that everything is working fine, and then disconnect the USB cable. Or maybe at other times you run into some sort of a problem, and that will be what you can use to figure out what's going on. All right, I want to show you some other tricks that you can do in SonarPoint Dock. So I just launched SonarPoint Dock again. I switched my recorder off and on because it was in recording mode, and that way I got back to dock mode. Remember where the orange LED is on. So checking my communication settings. COM3 is selected. Actions, connect device. All right. So now I'm going to get my raw comms up. And I said I was going to show you some idiosyncrasies. Let's say I wanted to set the sample frequency to something like, let's say 400 kilohertz. So I'm selecting that, 400,000. Actions, right settings, and see what will happen now. It's actually now at 40,000. Notice that. Let me try again. 400,000 actions, and it already clicked back to 40,000. What's going on here? Let me do 100,000. If I have actions, it stays at 100,000. 250,000 actions stays there. But if I go higher, before we had 312,500, I hit actions and I lose 0. And the reason is that this version of the software, the configuration software, is a bit older, and it sets a limit at 250 kilohertz sample frequency. But there's a way to get around the problem. All right, so I'm going to go down here in the raw comms window. 1013 is me, comma 0. We went through that before, comma ST for set, comma, notice here in the blue window, sample FRQ, sample underscore FRQ, comma, and now I want to go to my 312500 that wasn't accepted before, and I just hit enter. Here I get a little OK command. If I now go actions, notice how this one is still at 31250, missing a 0. Actions, read settings. Let me make sure it really accepted it, and yes, it did. So in other words, you can set all sorts of send all sorts of commands here, and then that bypasses the user interface. So you have a little bit more power here. I do want to show you another aspect related to that. Let me go out of MicroMars dock and go into the more capable TerraTerm for getting a wide display screen. Setup, serial port, COM3, 9600. Okay, maximize this. 1013,0, That's a recording report that lets you know what the last mission of this recorder was. And this one, we already started a new mission that happens whenever you do right settings. So there won't be much here, but I want to show you that. Okay. Here we go, mission report for SonarPoint serial number 1013. Here's the sample rate, the segment size that we set when it was configured, and so on and so forth. Right now, there's nothing on any of these cards. But as you recover a recorder from the water, you might want to get a recording report. Actually, I highly recommend that. And get a report of what happened on each individual SD card, and that may help you as you are analyzing all your data. If you run into any hiccups, there should be some explanation as to what was going here in the recording report. Now just be careful. Once you hit the right settings command in SonarPoint doc or MicroMars doc, it's really the same software, then all your data here for the recording report is erased and you will have lost that data. So do it after you recover the recorder, maybe even before you start reading the SD cards themselves. All right, so I want to show you another thing that you can do here in SonarPoint doc, and that is to set the operating mode of the recorder. Now, what is the operating mode? The operating mode is factory set based on your order, your requirements. There are several such operating modes. We have them here, and you can also get this document on our website. Number one is standalone recorder. So that's for a recorder that's just recording sound. You're not trying to localize sound. Of course, you could have multiple recorders, but your point is not to localize any sounds. So it's the most simple mode. Number two is using the internal GPS of the recorder after it's switched on to precision calibrate the clock and set the clock. And so now you have several recorders that are synchronized to each other. That synchronization can be maintained after submergence by using an SPP series synchronization pinger that we offer. So that is the second possibility here, and you will have seen in the LED tutorial how the LEDs blink synchronously if successful synchronization is achieved. Number three is external GPS synchronized. Now a submerged recorder is connected to an RPT1 repeater on a buoy on the surface, and that repeater sends GPS timestamps and the precision 1 PPS timing signal to the submerged recorder. And so synchronization is maintained for an indefinite endurance, however long you want to record. Finally, the last three modes here are the so-called sample clock propagation modes, where the several recorders form a cluster and they're tied together through a synchronization harness using the connector on the recorder. You have one master and you can have any practical number of slaves. That gives you synchronization to within the sub-sample region, about 100 nanoseconds, so it's very, very precise. It's typically used with small tetrahedral arrays to get a 3D bearing as to where sound came from, or you could have several of these tetrahedral arrays, and the intersection of 3D bearings then provides you with the position. Another example would be a linear towed array. Mode 4 includes GPS synchronization. Mode 5 is without the GPS synchronization, which is more suitable if you're just using a single synchronized recorder cluster, not several ones of them that are in turn synchronized to each other, and maybe you don't have practical visibility of the sky for the GPS signals. And then finally, of course, as I said before, all the other recorders other than the master have to be configured as slaves. So how would you set that? You would just go into here and you could say 1013,0, GT, op mode. Gets the current operating mode. Oh, this one is already set to 2. Let me set it again. ST, op mode, and 2. Remember, that was the GPS synchronized one. Next step, let's see what happens once we are in GPS synchronized mode. Remember the EDR command, exit doc request. I'll use that again. And here we go. And the recorder is now asleep. Let me get out of this and into TerraTerm again, as we did before. Set up serial port. You already know the drill, COM3 on my machine, a 9600 baud. Maximize the screen. It's in sleep mode. I'm going to switch it on again. Now it's waiting for GPS signals. And here you see the reports from the GPS module that's inside the recorder. So it's working fine. The date and time, it says here, it's the 5th of January 1980, which is obviously not the case. Now it just switched over to the 6th of January at 0000 hours. See that here? And that shows you that the GPS works. I'm not under a clear sky here. I'm in the office, so it won't acquire a GPS signal. But that's, again, another feedback mechanism that's available to you. So this is a technique of setting the operating mode on the recorder.